Thank you, Tim. Just want to remind everyone that the session is being recorded and it will be made available later on. So we will get started, everyone. And my name is Laura Trethui, and I'll be the moderator for today's presentation, Economic Equity in Ocean Mapping. And I'm an ocean journalist and I live in San Diego, and I write for The Guardian, the San Diego Union Tribune. And right now I'm working on my second book about Seabed 2030 and this quest to map the ocean floor by the end of the decade. And that will be coming out in March 2023 from Harper Wave. So everyone mark your calendars. I've interviewed many of the people presenting at Map the Gaps for my book, including Tim Kearns, who most of you probably already know. He runs Map the Gaps, and Tim asked me recently if I had any ideas about economic equity in ocean mapping, and I do. At that time, I just come back from a reporting trip to Northern Canada, where I watched a group of young Inuit hunters learn how to map the seafloor around the village of Arviat in Northern Canada. As many of you already know, the world's oceans are not evenly mapped, and maps of the Arctic Ocean are particularly sparse. And that's a huge problem for northern communities like Arviat, which is an Inuit hamlet of about 3,000 people. The maps of surrounding waters in Arviat and farther out into Hudson's Bay are either very outdated or blank. And this has led to the unique collaboration that the presenters who are with us today are going to talk about. And I feel that this collaboration really gets at this topic of economic equity and ocean mapping and why it's so important when we move forward mapping the gaps. So now I'm going to introduce you to the people who will actually be talking for most of the hour. And these are the people I spent time with in the north. And so I've got with me today Shirley Tagalik and Kukik Baker, and they are calling in from Arviat, where Kukik is the executive director and Shirley is the director of the Aqqiumavvik Society, which is a community alliance of public, mental, and community health groups. And then we've also got with us Julien Desrochers, and he is the chief operating officer at M2 Oceans, and he is calling in from Quebec City. And so we're going to kick off these presentations with Kukik and Shirley. Thank you both for joining us. They are coming in from the Aqqiumavvik Society, and they can offer insight into Arviat and what the ocean maps there might mean to the community. And then we'll move over to Julien, who will explain how this collaboration actually works on the ground and some of the technology behind it. And then we'll try to finish early and leave as much time for discussion and audience questions at the end. So I will turn it over to Shirley and Kukik now.
Thank you, Laura. You can have the next slide, Julien. So we are on the west coast of Hudson Bay, and we have ice coverage for 8 months of the year. We're a community, all of the Nunavut communities are coastal communities except for one. So we're a community that relies heavily on our sea for access to harvesting and for travel and for daily activities. In Arviat, we run the Aqqiumavvik Society, and one of our key programs is the Ujiswinak Youth Monitoring and Harvesting Program. So in that program, youth are trained in environmental monitoring. They're particularly looking at the impacts of wildlife health, land, sea, ice, and weather conditions. We have youth gather data and then report that data back to the community to engage the community in making meaning of the observations that we're collecting, and hopefully in developing a stronger sense of how this informs safety for travelers and how it might impact on especially their harvesting activity. We work with a number of research partners, and we're really pleased to be working currently with M2 Oceans. And all of our information is posted on both our Facebook and our website. Next slide, please. So one of the projects that we were involved in is called Arctic Corridors Northern Voices. And because we recognized that shipping was going to be increasing in the north as much of the ice melts earlier on, a huge consortium of researchers initiated this study in communities, and Aqqiumavvik led the study in Arviat. Some of the recommendations that came out of that report, the priority recommendation was the need for charting of our coastal waters. Because Arviat has significant glacial rebound coupled with climate changes in the amount of precipitation and ice coverage that we have, it means that our waters are becoming less predictable and more treacherous. They also asked for a number of other things, navigational buoys, responses to shipping disasters, understanding coastal erosion and the impacts of ice. Next slide. Many of those recommendations we don't have the opportunity to deal with. One of the things that we are dealing with is looking at the impacts of changes to our ice coverage. And so we're a partner in a group called Smart Ice, where we are doing constant ice monitoring. We're looking at changes to ice conditions, impacts on safety and wildlife, depending on how the ice coverage is shifting. We train youth in using the technology and taking readings for us. And there's also opportunities for youth to develop some of the emerging technology and to be able to share that with other communities who are beginning to join this program. And then, of course, they produce maps, which we share throughout the community. Next slide. So here's an example of a Smart Ice map. It shows the ice density and on the route that was mapped. And we put these on our Facebook page with comments about things that were noticed along the way. And we also have an example of our marine mapping, which we are doing in the summer with M2 Oceans, which Julien is going to speak more directly to. Next slide. So we really focus our program on being proactive, trying to engage community in proactive lobbying, but also in understanding what's happening in our environment so that we can be more prepared and are better able to respond in good ways to what we see out there. And of course, all of that is tied up in the way we train youth. Next slide. And a key concern is for our marine wildlife. And that's where youth are doing wildlife monitoring. So they're spending a great deal of time out on the Hudson Bay. And so it's really important to us that we have good information about the waters that we're using. Next slide. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kukik to explain how we run the Ujiswinak Young Hunters program and what that looks like. Thank you.
Matna. So our Young Hunters program is a year-round program that we started in 2012. And over the years, we just keep adding to the program. So Young Hunters is about teaching youth traditional hunting practices, values, and beliefs around sustainable hunting. One of our elders that we work with in the program, we had asked him what are some things that we should be teaching our youth, and he said it's not just one thing. There's a lot of things that we need to teach them, but one thing that's really important is that they're not observing well. And in his words, we had to teach them Ujaqsuinak, which is the ability to observe well. And the way that we do our teaching, you can sit in a classroom and get taught, but through that way, you're only taught to your head. You're not taught to your heart, because it's not a teaching that touches you on a deeper level. And so when we take the kids out and actually teach them while they're on the land, we teach to the heart. It creates motivation, positive attitude, and determination in our youth. And you could see the change from when we do a classroom setting teaching to on the land teaching. I feel it's more effective when we do it that way. Through the Young Hunters program, we want them to build relationships. So relationships with the people around them, with the peers in their group, with their elders, with their families, and their friends. We also want them to build relationships with the animals around them, being able to observe the animals in their environment, getting to know what they look like, getting them to know their habits, and being able to notice the differences, so that if they see there's an injured animal, then they're able to identify that. But also with that, we want them to have a relationship with their environment. And so having a relationship with their environment requires them to be observant. Over the course of the summer, the Young Hunters program takes our kids out mapping the bay. For a whole day of mapping, we take two participants out. The Young Hunters program has 8 to 10 participants per intake. And so we take 2 of them out for the day, because the boat's not big enough to hold more. And it's really like going back and forth, following the grid gets really boring for them. So we don't want too many of them in the boat at the same time. But when they're going mapping the bay, it's not only mapping the bay, they're being taught boat safety, water safety. They're learning the land place names. They're learning how to observe animals in their environment. So they're looking over the side of the boat, looking at the fish in the water, looking at the jellyfish, looking out for rocks and other dangerous areas while they're mapping. And then the mapping that they do, at the end of the summer, they get to see the finished map of the area that they did, and help bring that map out into the community by putting up the posters, and having those posters be on Facebook, and sharing those images with their friends and family. As you can see, driving the grid is very slow going. And so we have our instructors try and do little games and stuff with them just to try and keep them engaged. So they could be playing a game of like I Spy and trying to observe the things around them where they're playing I Spy games, or counting the number of fish that pass by them, or looking out for whales, or all kinds of different activities to help them gain those observation skills and to be able to identify the things around them. They're also looking at the weather and weather patterns, the clouds in the sky, if there are any, the winds, what the waves look like as the winds are picking up, what they need to understand to keep themselves safe in that area. So this is the map that they did this season, and it was shared in the community on our Facebook page, and posters were put up in the community. The maps are distributed to the wildlife office, the Hamlet office, the search and rescue, the Hunters and Trappers organization, put up in various store lobbies, and also people can come into the office and ask for us to print them images themselves. And the images are also, I think, on the Hydrographic Canadian page, or they will be there soon. And the next slide will be Shirley.
In terms of our next step, we're trying to be very systematic in all of our monitoring efforts. We're continually doing training, and we have the opportunity to bring Julien into Aqqiumavvik to train our youth and our youth instructors directly. We are trying to make sure that we communicate all of the information that we have to every level, and encourage uptake of the information that we're gathering, so that it can impact people who are shipping or who are coming into our waters, and hopefully inform them about some of the more dangerous areas that are along our coast. We also want to be able to plan effectively to continue doing this work to moving forward, so that we're identifying which are the most used waters, which should be mapped next. And then we're really trying to also gather funding so that we can get more HydroBlock technology, so that we can increase the amount of mapping that we're able to do. So thank you for the opportunity to share that, and I'll turn it over to Julien.
All right, thank you, Shirley and Kukik, for the great presentation and giving insight on what you guys have been doing. This is Julien here, and I'll give a little bit more insight on the technology that we've been using, and the data quality for the data that's been acquired by the Aqqiumavvik Society. So here it goes. All right, so like it's been said probably many times during this talk, in the Arctic particularly, there are a lot of gaps In the ocean mapping, we can see on the right side, this is the NONNA coverage for the Hudson Bay. And on the left side, if we zoom in, this is the community of Arviat. So we can see that the approaches to the village have been mapped, but nothing along the coast. And then, like Shirley mentioned previously, post-glacial rebound, it's a very important thing happening in Hudson Bay. You can see that land is rising by more than 10 millimeters per year. So if we take into account that the last CHS surveys date back from 1997, well, this tells us that land has risen by more than a foot or near a foot since the last surveys. So it can definitely have an impact for navigation safety. All right, so this presentation, I'll talk about M2Ocean, who we are, previous CSB project, which are relevant for this particular project, the concerns of Arviat, which have already been discussed previously, the technology, the training that was provided, the data analysis, the products, and what are the next steps. All right, so M2Ocean, it's a spin-off issued from CITCO, created in 2018. CITCO, which is a research and development organization in marine geomatics based in Eastern Canada, more precisely Rimouski, Quebec. So M2Ocean, their objective is to offer innovative technological solutions to the maritime community for mapping the seabed. So CITCO has done some R&D to develop hydrographic products. Then M2Ocean commercializes them. So the products that we have are the HydroBall, the HydroBlock, and HydroTom. The services we offer is product sale. We also offer support and training for the use of equipment, and it's not only how to turn on your equipment and do the processing. We do more specific training. In the case of the Aqqiumavvik Society, we've really helped them build their capacity in ocean mapping. And we also do specialized hydrographic mandates. So to give a little bit of context to how all this came about, it all started with a project that was funded by DFO back in 2017, which is the Crowdsourced Bathymetry Northern Canada Area project. So this project was led by CITCO in collaboration with other Common members, Common, which is the Canadian Ocean Research and Education Network. So for that project, the idea was to propose a way to map the Arctic. And the approach was collaborative bathymetry. So using pre-qualified systems, HydroBall and HydroBox developed by CITCO, and collaborating with local communities and building automatic data processing and dissemination tools, well, it was believed that that would be more reactive and cost effective than bringing survey teams from the south. When we say the south, it's not South America, it's mainland Canada and conventional hydrographic tools. So the results of that project, systems were developed allowing non-experts to collect hydrographic data. Those systems were the HydroBall and the HydroBox. Training was successfully provided to the indigenous communities, and a workflow to automatically process bathymetric data was put in place. So following this project, Shirley and Kukik, with all their concerns in their community, they reached out to us to see, well, could they start doing this? And that was basically, I previously worked at CITCO, and the idea of this crowdsourced bathymetry project was exactly that, to have communities reach out to say, well, we want to get this mapping done in our community, like how can we go about this? Like previously mentioned by Shirley and Kukik, they basically whenever they can, they're out on the sea. So they need to ensure that they'll be able to navigate safely. And to do that, it's not waiting for the Canadian Hydrographic Service to come and map your area. because let's be honest, that won't happen. So they wanted to do the mapping themselves. So to do that, well, first you need technology, and the idea is to have a technology that can be used by non-experts, people who don't necessarily have initial experience using hydrographic systems. So the system to be used was the HydroBlock, which is an easy-to-use hydrographic system developed by CIDCO, allowing the collection of trusted crowdsourced bathymetry. So the HydroBlock, basically, it's a system that can be installed on opportunity vessels. It's a pre-qualified system. The offsets between the different sensors are known. The sonar is easy to configure. There's accurate vertical positioning to the ellipsoid with a high quality GNSS receiver. There's also attitude measurements. And the other beauty of it is that basically, yes, there are cables to connect, but for it to start working, basically you press on the power button and all the sensors are recording. So in terms of the evolution of the HydroBlock, well, the first prototype was made in 2017. So that was for the initial CSBNC project that I mentioned earlier. And then for the past 4 years, developments have been done by CIDCO and MtG, which is another one of our partners. And currently in 2021, there's still ongoing R&D. We're working to lower sensor costs, having automatic data transfer capabilities, etc. In terms of the training that was provided, so we've been, this is actually the third year we've been working with the Aqqiumavvik Society. The first year was sort of, we went up there, did a demo and did a bit of acquisition, but it got more serious in starting 2020. So 2020 and 2021 summer seasons, we did training and provided support. And basically we built a customized training program and to help them, because not only do they want to be able to do the mapping, but they want to learn about it as much as they can. So we're teaching them everything hydrography, I guess. So, you know, survey planning, installing the systems on the opportunity vessel, operating the systems, and then having good survey practices. So, you know, the survey speed you should have, what type of line spacing depending on the coverage you need, adjusting the sonar configuration, doing some real-time quality control, and also equipment maintenance and troubleshooting. So in terms of what survey areas were covered, so this is the survey area for the 2020 season. So 6 days of surveys were completed between August and September for an area of 2.4 kilometers square. I think what's important to understand and what people might not realize is that you know, surveying in the Arctic is quite challenging just in terms of weather. It's usually very windy up there, so it's not every day you can go out and do a survey. So and like Shirley said previously, there's ice most of the year, so you know, the on-water time is limited to go out and survey. And for the I'll just go back to the previous slide. So what's interesting about the survey area for 2020 is that this was completely uncharted territory. So no one had ever mapped that area. And then in 2021, the survey area that was mapped was the area, the inlet that's directly near the community where people leave to go out and harvest. That's where they come from. And that area had already been surveyed last time in '97. So it'll be interesting to compare that data once it's been processed with the CHS soundings Are we seeing that the land is rising and stuff like that? That'll be interesting to check out once it's processed. In terms of data quality analysis, because it's nice to collect data, but in terms of making sure that data is accurate, because I'd say, as opposed to traditional crowdsourced bathymetry, where sometimes you might have lots of soundings in a certain passage in the Arctic, it's very low traffic. So we want to ensure that the data that's collected is of sufficient quality for it to be used, for instance, for navigation. So for the 2020 season, we did some cross-line validation of the survey data, and we were quite happy with the results, as we, the mean differences at the intersections are better than 6 centimeters. CHS also assessed the data and said it was of CATSOC B standard. So that's also pretty good. In terms of the provided products, well, to the community, a bathymetric chart of the survey area. We'll do another one for the area that's been covered this year. And then to the CHS, we've provided the process soundings, the data processing workflow, and associated metadata. That was for the 2020 season. We'll also do that again for the 2021 data that's been collected. So like you've seen previously, that's the chart that was provided to the community. So in terms of results of this whole project / collaboration, it's been great, because Aqqiumavvik was able to build capacity to measure the seafloor. The training and HydroBlock, with the training in HydroBlock, it allowed them to develop skills to acquire quality hydrographic data. So I guess that's from my perspective, but really for them, I think it's great, because they're learning a new skill set, and now that they've learned it, they can build on that, and they don't need to rely on anybody else to start doing it. So they're now available to conduct hydrographic surveys with minimal assistance, and then these new skills will allow to verify the community knowledge with science and ensure safer navigation. Like mentioned before, the data has been assessed, and it's been, I guess, qualified, and we hope that eventually it could end up on CHS charts after their evaluation. So the next steps, what we hope is for Aqqiumavvik, well, we don't hope it'll happen. Aqqiumavvik will continue building capacity in ocean mapping. So more data collection for the coming survey seasons, learn new surveying skills. We also want to identify more valuable products for the community, maybe have intuitive maps for safe navigation, maybe have maps on a cell phone app. We want to improve the hydrographic systems and workflow. We hope the data will appear on the IHO DCDB. It's actually in the works, should happen soon. And then the data to appear on the CHS NONNA grids. So that's, I heard that when the NONNA grid will be updated for the 2021 season, the 2020 data will be on there. We're also actually in discussion with CHS for data to end up on the official charts. Nothing guaranteed, but we're working on that. And last but not least, we hope to spread the word, to have other communities worldwide to engage in collaborative bathymetry. There's multiple ways to map the seafloor. You can, from satellites, from drones that navigate automatically, but I think it's not only one of those solutions that will make it happen, but various ways like collaborative bathymetry, what we are doing. So I'd like to thank all the project participants that are here on this page. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening to this presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. And thank you to Shirley and Julien and Kukik. And we've got a little poll that just came up, and kind of listening test, see if you were all paying attention. So so let us know what you think. And yeah, now we'll go into the audience discussion portion of the talk. And I'm just gonna kick things off with a couple of questions for our presenters, and feel free to drop your questions into the chat or to the Q&A, and I will ask our presenters. So I wanted to start with Kukik and just ask if you could tell us just a little bit more, maybe with some specific examples about some of the hazards in the water that Arviat residents have been concerned about recently, and how does that directly impact access to harvesting food in the Arctic? I know country food is a big source of nutrition in the north, and so, you know, how does hazards and all that interact with actually getting access to food?
So in our community, we, especially right in our bay here, directly in front of the community, we have some reefs that have been showing up. Like when I was a kid, they weren't as big as they are now, and there was only one reef kind of close to town that people would have to look out for. But now there's two reefs on the east side of town, and then there's one reef, kind of a really big reef now on the west side of town, of the dock. And so these reefs are getting bigger, and there's more rocks forming around them or collecting around them. And a lot of people, my husband included, our Young Hunters program included, have hit these reefs that are forming, and it's caused lots of damage. Like you have to get a whole new lower unit. Lower unit is minimum one, for one lower unit for the Young Hunters program was over $3,000, and my husband's was over $6,000. And so that's for a small community that doesn't have very many jobs here, especially for those hunters who hunt for their livelihood. That $6,000 is a lot to incur over the summer. And so we wanted to start mapping our hunting grounds so that we could show our hunters these are dangerous spots where you need to avoid. We've had people who have hit their lower units and got stuck out on the land, on the water, and then winds start picking up, and so you're being pushed further out from shore, and it's very scary. Before my dad passed away, he had told me a few stories of him rescuing people on the land, on the water, and there's nothing out there to describe where you are. And one of my cousins, I have many cousins, one of my cousins was coming back from fishing grounds and hit his lower unit and was stranded, and they started drifting further out. They were out all night, and so my dad went out at first light and tried to head out to where they were, and they were talking over the CB radio, and he kept asking him, well, where was the last place that you saw land? What was the last piece of land that you remember seeing? And so my dad headed straight to that area, And then he said, describe what you see around you. And my cousin was freaking out. There's 4 of them on the boat. And he said, there's nothing to describe around here. We're in nothing but water. There's nothing to describe. And my dad told him, look up, what do you see in the sky? And he says, there's just clouds. So describe the clouds. And so he started describing the clouds. That one looks like a teddy bear. So my dad saw the cloud that he saw and started heading towards that cloud. Okay, describe another cloud. So he eventually got to him a few, like an hour or so after he started describing the clouds. And once he was close enough, he could see the light shining off the side of the boat and headed straight for them. And it took them a while. Like there were 2, my dad's boat and his friend's boat, they had to tow my cousin's boat, which was larger, back to town. And so it took, I think, 3 boats to actually bring them back to town, and a whole community of worried people. That was one happy ending. But we've also, south of Aqqiumavvik, 10 miles south of Aqqiumavvik, we had like a fishing vessel, a peterhead boat that had got caught in stormy weather and ran aground. And there were 4 men on board and none of them survived. And so it's something very needed in our community, and it touches everybody here. Having those kinds of things happen to the people around us, we don't want that to happen ever again. And so we took it upon ourselves to be able to help the people around us. And so the maps that are created here are shared with everybody, and hopefully it'll be able to save somebody's life one day.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kukik. It's a really touching story. Someone mentioned in the chat, and it's true. Really brings into focus the meaning of having a usable, workable map, that this has an effect on everyday life. So we have our poll came back, and everyone was listening very, very well. We got 92% chose the right answer, which is 14% of the Canadian Arctic is either adequately or surveyed to modern or adequate standards. So good job, everyone, you're paying attention. And then I guess we'll go over to Julien. And I was wondering if you could tell us maybe a little bit more about the costs of HydroBlock, and if you could tell us a little bit more about how, I know that you're working on trying to bring down that cost and make this more accessible to communities.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the HydroBlock currently, it's you know, the system currently, I would say it is not low cost. Not you know, everyone who wants to do bathymetry during the weekend can you know, purchase a system. But you know, we're working on lowering the sensor cost. Like currently we have, you know, GNSS high grade receiver that, you know, cost a few $1,000. So that gives an idea of, you know, the price of the system. But we're currently looking to lower down that cost. Unfortunately, I don't want to give a price because we're still R&Ding it, so it's we're not on a fixed price. But the idea is that it would become affordable for an organization, let's say, to purchase multiple units. Yeah, that's what I'd say for now.
Okay. And so then we also have some questions from the community that are online. And so we have, oh, Shirley's handling that one. Okay, great. Well, then actually I will go over to Shirley maybe and ask you a question as soon as you're done answering that. And I was wondering, Shirley has a really long history in education and mentoring opportunities in the North. And I was wondering if you could tell us just a little bit more about what the HydroBlock means to jobs, to mentorship in Arviat specifically, and maybe what you see going forward.
Yeah, thanks for that question. You know, in Arviat, as Kukik said, there are not very many opportunities for employment. And so one of the key concerns that we have in the Aqqiumavvik program is to build the capacity of youth, their understanding and their capacity to use new technologies, and also the confidence they have when they learn how to use these technologies on their own, and they can produce information that they can then share with the community. So they become the knowledge holders, they become the message carriers back to the community. And of course, this gives youth the opportunity to give back to the community, but also to build a reputation as a contributing human being, which is an expectation, you know, within Inuit culture. So creating opportunities to build capacity and confidence in youth is a key goal in all of our programming, but also then supporting youth and encouraging youth to take those next steps. So if you have experience doing research, then we can hire you as a summer research assistant for researchers who are coming into our community to do other work. If you have an interest in using technologies, then we can, you know, try to link you up with opportunities to develop those skills in new ways. And we definitely try to encourage youth to go on to, you know, post-secondary opportunities, to explore, you know, environmental technology or biology or whatever it is. So definitely that education piece is at the heart of what we do. And we've actually recently just submitted a paper that looks at how this kind of science, lived science, which is part of Inuit culture, how lived science really impacts and benefits a child so much more than our Western style of science teaching does. And I know many of the youth have said, boy, I learned more, you know, attending Young Hunters than I ever learned in the classroom. And that is exactly the reason, because in the classroom, you aren't given the opportunity to actually apply what you're learning in a meaningful and relevant way. And so that's a key piece of what Aqqiumavvik tries to do. And especially with the marine mapping, it might be boring, you know, going across the bay, but they're learning things all the time, because the instructor who's with them is also a teacher during the winter season, and they're observing everything, you know, with the tides. Where are the tides going? Is there a current here? What are the clouds doing? How is the wind changing? And every different set of patterns creates a different set of results. And so this is how youth build their competence in terms of being able to read their environment. So it's the mapping, you know, has many outcomes, familiarity with the technology, actually doing the map, but then having an opportunity to really do this, weather predicting in a very measured way with young people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you for that, Shirley. There's so many different components to this. Hey, it's the technology, it's the teaching ancestral knowledge. It's really a mashup between so many different worlds here. Actually, we've got Julien, who's going to answer a couple of the more mapping related questions. So I'll just turn it over to him now.
Yeah, just because it's easier to talk about it than to write it down. So to answer, I guess, both a bit of Mathieu and Serge questions. Well, first for Mathieu, talking about customized charts. What we're seeing is, what we like is, obviously the people who are navigating in the community don't have a neck disc on their boats. Like, it's not they aren't big shipping vessels. So what we'd be hoping to do is, have apps or that can be available on a cell phone or a tablet, and they're actually we're actually in discussion with an organization that have built an app with for the Inuit communities in the north, and for them to I guess have the data displayed on this app, sort of like a Google Maps, but for the water. So the idea would be for the collected data to be available by anyone who goes to travel on the water. When they're on the water, well, they can see at this location, this is the depth, sort of thing. And I guess that sort of partly answers Serge's question. So do the people on the boats have the means to display the grid showing their position? So when they're doing the acquisition, they're using, let's say for the bathymetric surveys, they're following some survey lines, so they see the depth that that show up on the grid. So that's while they're doing the data acquisition. But in terms of people who are navigating on the water, no, they don't yet have the means to display the data that's been collected while they are navigating. But obviously, that's something that we want to work towards. Yep. Hopefully that answers both questions.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Julien. We actually just had a bunch more questions come in, but maybe there's one or two you could answer here, but then I think we have to wrap up. One was, maybe we should just end on this question about how can the success of what you're doing now be replicated elsewhere? And feel free, anybody, to jump in and answer this one.
So I could start. From a community perspective, we try to promote all of our programs as much as we can. So for example, with the Aqqiumavvik program, we have developed a manual specifically for communities interested in developing their own program. It's a downloadable PDF off our website. We also have a 5-day train the trainer to, we can take to communities who want to get started on a program. We have the curriculum that we've developed for our program, and all of those resources associated with the program are available. When we're doing a new program, like the marine mapping program, we are talking about it, presenting on it in conferences like this, to try and encourage other communities to look at what might be possible. I know I've reached out to communities in Nunavik on the east coast of the Hudson Bay, and I believe some of them have been in touch with Julien about possibilities of mapping their coastlines. And we've also, with the partners that we've been working with through the Arctic Corridors project, which actually won a Governor General's Innovation Award in Canada this year. We've been promoting the idea that communities can become proactive in trying to map their own waters to ensure safer travel and safer access. Because almost all of the Arctic communities are coastal communities, and almost none of the Arctic communities have got have got their coastal waters adequately mapped. As Julien pointed out, there's point of access for shipping that is coming into the community, but nothing beyond that is mapped. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do, but definitely these programs are all replicable. If we can do it in Arviat, then basically any community can do it if you have the will to go after it and get it done. And Julien, you might want to add to that a bit in terms of the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gave a pretty complete answer, Shirley. But yeah, if we talk a bit about the technology and like how we're going about it is, a bit when I talked about the previous CSBNC project that was done up in Northern Canada, it's like, build tools that will make it accessible for, non-experts, non-experts at the beginning to start and do the mapping. So the idea is, have the tools and the workflow for it to be, I guess, easy for anyone who wants to start and do it to get it going. And yeah, so I'd say, I think, yeah, I don't have anything else to say, sorry.
That's okay. Julien, we've and Shirley and Kukik, thank you so much for presenting today. We've got to kind of quickly shuffle off because the next presentation is about to start. So I hope you'll all stick around for that. And yeah, huge thanks again to Kukik and Shirley and Julien for talking about this presentation and a topic that we don't often hear about. Okay, take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.